Global Finance, Topic 4, Retail Foreign Exchange Transactions, including bid-ask rates, cross rates, credit and debit card transactions, copyright Lou Gaddis. In this topic, we're going to talk about how to convert currencies when there's a bid and ask quotation, compute cross-rate calculations, and then we'll talk about how to compute the cost of using either cash, credit, or debit cards in foreign exchange transactions. But just a review from some material earlier, if you see that the kroner exchange rate per dollar is 4 crown, goes from 4 crown per dollar to 4.5 crown per dollar, what is the appreciation of the krone? Well, if I were to just take the new exchange rate minus the old exchange rate over the old exchange rate, 4.5 over 4 over 4, that would tell me the percent change in the value of the dollar, since this quote is the price of the dollar. And you can see the dollar's gone from 4 to 4.5, so it'll show an appreciation. So the crown must have actually devalued. To get the depreciation of the crown, I could take new minus over old, where I flip each exchange rate, 1 over 4.5 and 1 over 4. Or I can just know that my alternative rule is if I take old minus new over new, it'll tell me what happened to the numerator currency. So if I take 4 minus 4.5 over 4.5, I see that the crown is 11% cheaper. So for Americans, hotel rooms in Copenhagen are on sale, 11% cheaper. Let's talk about how to use bid and ask exchange rates. So a bid and ask exchange rate will be an example that if you go to an airport or you're in a city outside the airport, you might find an exchange office, a foreign exchange office. So for example, you go to an office, and these are some rates I found a few years ago when traveling, that the quoted price for the British pound was 143-185. What that means is if you would like to buy pounds, you would pay $1.85. And then if you have some pounds left over at the end of your trip and you want to sell them back, you'll get a 143. So you can think of the TravelX or currency offices as making a spread, the difference between what they buy the crown or buy the pounds for and what they sell the pounds for. Now, what makes things more complicated with currencies is when you're buying one currency, you're simultaneously selling another. You know, just like if you were to go to the store and buy milk, if I bought a gallon of milk, one way of characterizing transaction is I'm buying milk, selling dollars. Well, if I am, say, buying pounds, I am selling dollars. So this is the exchange rate. To buy pounds, buying at the high price, sell dollars. This is the exchange rate to say sell pounds, buy dollars. Now let's look at an indirect exchange rate, which always makes things a little more difficult. This is the kroner per dollar exchange rate, and it's quoted at 492 bid, 630 offer or ask. And what that means, this is the high price of the dollar. This is the low price of the dollar. So you always remember that in a bid-ask market, the customer will always buy at the high price, and sell at the low price. Now what makes this complicated is in this example, this is the price of the pound. This is the price where I buy pounds, sell dollars. But in this case, this is actually the price of the dollar quoted in crown. So this is the price of actually buying dollars, where this is the price of buying pounds. So this is the exchange rate I need to use to buy dollars, sell crown, or sell dollars at the low price, buy crown. So let's do some examples. Let's look more at this exchange rate. The bid-ask price on the crown, quoted in indirect terms against the dollar, 492 bid, 630 ask. Remember, this is the high price. This is where you buy the dollar, sell the crown. This is where you sell the dollar, buy the crown. So if you are asked how many crown or kroner can you buy for $100, I'll set up my basic problem. $100 times some crown per dollar exchange rate will give me crown. Now the question is, do I use 492 or 630? Well, if you go back up to the argument we use, that this is the exchange rate. This is the low exchange rate for the dollar. So this is the exchange rate to sell dollar, buy crown. You can realize that that's the exchange rate to use. But there's an easier way to do this from the perspective of a customer. Whenever a customer gets into a bid-ask market, in other words, when there are two prices, the customer always loses. So the answer is, how many krone can you buy for $100? Well, since you're buying crown, you're going to get a lot less than you'd like. So when looking for an exchange rate, crown per dollar, I'm going to wind up getting the lower exchange rate. So that's why I know to use 492. Let's look at another example. How many crown will it cost to buy $100? Now seemingly it looks like the same type of problem here. $100 times a crown per dollar exchange rate. Dollars cancel out, I get crown. But the difference is, in this case, how many crown will it cost to buy $100? Remember, now we could use our understanding of bid-ask rates again and say, okay, I'm buying dollars. I will buy dollars at the high price and sell crown. So I know to use 630. But the easier way of thinking about it is, well, if I'm computing a cost, it's going to be high. Where in the last problem, go back a slide, I'm saying how many can I buy, how many can I receive? I'm going to receive less. But in this example, I'm going to pay more. So again, the customer always loses. So I need the high crown per dollar exchange rate. So the answer is 630 crown. Now where it gets confusing is when you got to start flipping exchange rates. So here's the same bid-ask market. How many dollars will it cost to buy 100 crown? So in this problem, you set up your problem 100 crown. I need $1 per crown exchange rate, and that's going to give me an answer in dollars. But in this problem, how many dollars will it cost? So this is a cost. That cost is going to be high. So I know I'm going to use a high exchange rate. The problem with this, I need $1 per crown exchange rate. These are actually crown per dollar exchange rates. So I actually need to use the highest dollar per crown exchange rate. The dollar per crown exchange rate would be 1 over this or 1 over this. The highest value, just looking at these ratios, 1 over 4.9 or 1 over 4 or 6.3, this is the highest dollar per crown exchange rate, which is 1 over the lowest denominator. So in that case, I knew to use the highest dollar per crown, which is 1 over the lowest crown per dollar. And that becomes your answer, 100 divided by 4.92, which is $20.33. So here's another example where you have to flip an exchange rate. Suppose the peso price of $1 is 12 bid, 13 ask. How many dollars would it cost to buy 1,000 pesos? So since we're saying cost, we know it's going to be a high number. So I'll set up my problem. 1,000 pesos times $1 per peso exchange rate equals dollars. Pesos will cancel out. Since I'm talking about cost, cost is going to be high. So I need the high dollar per peso exchange rate, which is actually 1 over the low peso per dollar exchange rate. So I knew to use 1 over 12, not 1 over 13, because 1 over 13 is a lower value. The other way you could have known to use 12 is to use our bid-ask logic. In this case, I'm buying pesos, selling dollars. So I'm buying pesos, selling dollars. You could recognize this as the low price of the dollar and the high price of the dollar quoted in pesos. So if I'm selling dollar, I'm going to use 12. That's an alternative way to know to use 12. I find it easier just to remember that the customer always loses. They're always going to receive less or pay more. This leads to a little more complicated transaction. Often when you go to exchange rates, either in Europe everything's quoted against, say, the euro, or in America or in other places everything's quoted against the dollar. So say you go to New York and you're about to take a trip and you need to buy 500 crown, but you happen to have pounds. So you go to the airport and you look for exchange rates. Now, they're not going to have a crown-pound exchange rate or a pound per crown exchange rate. They're going to have, say, a dollar per pound exchange rate and a crown per dollar exchange rate, because customarily the pound's quoted in direct terms and the crown is in indirect terms against the dollar. So what I need to do is I need to find a crown-pound exchange rate. Now, first of all, let's try to figure out which exchange rate we need. So the question says you have 500 crown, and I'm trying to get pounds. So I need the pound per crown exchange rate. All right, and it says, how many pounds will it cost? It's going to be a higher cost, which is going to be the highest pound per crown exchange rate. Now we need to get a cross rate. How do I get the pound per crown exchange rate? Well, first, to get a pound per crown exchange rate, I can multiply, since the pounds are on top and the crown's on the bottom, I can multiply a pound per dollar exchange rate times a dollar per crown exchange rate. The dollars will cancel out, and I will get a pound per crown exchange rate. The problem is with bid-ask, there are 2 pound exchange rates and 2 crown exchange rates. Now, if you use the rule the customer always loses, this is the way you can solve it using bid-ask exchange rates. I'm going to pay the highest pound per crown exchange rate. So it's going to be the highest pound per dollar times the highest dollar per crown. The highest pound per dollar exchange rate is actually 1 over the lowest dollar per pound exchange rate. The highest dollar per crown exchange rate is actually 1 over the lowest crown per dollar exchange rate. Now it's a little bit complicated because you have to first figure out how to convert the exchange rate from both in terms of dollars into a pound crown. Recognize that you need the highest exchange rate, and then it's just be the multiplication of the 2 highest ratios, which in this case is 1 over the 2 lowest. Now if this problem were stated a little bit different, how many pounds would you receive for 500 crown? Then it would be the low exchange rates. So I do 1 over the high, 1 over the high. So here's a question for you. How many crown would you receive if you sold 300 pounds into this market? Well, if you have 300 pounds and you need to get crown, I need a crown per pound exchange rate. The crown per pound exchange rate. How many will I receive? It's going to be the lowest crown per pound exchange rate. I get the lowest crown per pound exchange rate by multiplying the lowest crown per dollar times the lowest dollar per pound. They cross out, and I get the lowest crown per pound exchange rate. So the lowest crown per dollar is $4.92. The lowest dollar per pound is $1.43. In this case, I don't have to flip either one of them. So my solution is to take $4.92 times $1.43. That gives me an exchange rate of $7.035. And I can use that to solve this problem, $2,100. Let's talk a few minutes about using debit cards and credit cards. If you skip the currency office at the airport and go to, say, the nearest real bank ATM, when I say real bank ATM, is sometimes right next to a Travelex office or a currency office, there'll be an ATM. That ATM is not really a fair ATM. That's really just an extension of the currency office. So if you go to a real bank, say a local bank in that country, right outside the airport or at least right outside the luggage area where they think they have you trapped, you can just use your debit card. Now you'll probably need a debit card with a Visa or MasterCard logo, which most do. And the advantages of this are the exchange rates are generally better if you're withdrawing a lot of money. The exchange rate you get, are not ones that look like this, right, with sometimes a 10 or 20% difference between the bid and ask exchange rates. They generally have, say, 1 to 5% markup or difference between bid and ask exchange rates. Typically, Visa will have a 1% fee for a transaction of foreign currency. All right, so that's the Visa company. And then your local bank will then maybe tack on 0 to 3%. So instead of paying, say, 10 or 20 or more percent markup on exchange rates between buying and selling currencies, there might be between 1 and 4% when you add those together. Now, these fees do not show up on your statement. They're just built into the exchange rate when you see what currency it was transacted at. Now, in addition to that, your issuing bank, say your local bank, may charge you, say, $3 to $7 or maybe sometimes more to use the ATM in a foreign office. All right, so my M&T Bank debit card charges me $5 when I use my card abroad. And then the local bank in the country may also charge you, say, $5 to $10. However, they're going to charge you in the local currency for using the local bank's ATM abroad. And all right, that's the fee for providing the machine and stocking it every day. So the total cost of using a debit card overseas is you generally get a good exchange rate. We'll call it the market rate. That's the fair price for buyers and sellers in the kind of the wholesale market of exchange rates. If you Google an exchange rate, that's the rate we're talking about. It's the rate at which banks buy foreign exchange. Then that exchange rate is going to be marked up by this, say, 1 to 5%. Your bank's going to charge a local fee in dollars, and then the foreign bank's going to charge a local fee in foreign currency. It seems very confusing, but let's see an example. Say you withdraw 150 pounds using an ATM card on your first day in London. You Google the exchange rate and you see the exchange rate's $1.57. That's kind of a fair price. That's the cost of getting pounds from your bank, right? That's the cost your bank pays for pounds. Now the ATM exchange rate markup is 3%. So you call your local bank and say, hey, what exchange rate do you use when determining the cost of foreign currency? How much of a profit do you make or markup do you make on the currency? So if you called your bank, you might find out that's 3%. Now some banks, like I know a Venture card from Capital One, they claim no markup. But then ask them, well, and if I use my card, you actually call your local bank and say, if I use my debit card overseas, how much you're going to charge me in a fee? Actually, I shouldn't use the example of a Venture card because that's a credit card. So I'll call my local bank and say, how do you determine the exchange rate on overseas? And then ask them, what is the ATM charge when I use it overseas or in another country? And then when you're at another country, just try to look at the ATM and try to determine what the fee is. It usually be listed somewhere in small print, or there might be a warning right before you withdraw the money that we're going to charge you £5 or £3 or whatever it is. So let's figure out how much it costs you in dollars to draw this 150 pounds. So if there's a £5 fee at the ATM, you're not withdrawing 150 pounds, you're actually withdrawing 155 pounds. So 155 pounds, I now need $1 per pound exchange rate, so the pounds cancel out. The market rate that you just Googled is $1.57 a pound. You're not going to get that exchange rate, you're going to get a higher exchange rate. You're going to get 157 marked up by 3%. So that's about 160. So So this is the actual exchange rate your bank uses, 157. They mark it up. Then the local bank tells you they're going to charge you a $7 fee. I'm sorry, your U.S. bank tells you they're going to charge you a $7 fee every time you use your foreign ATM. So if I take 155 pounds, exchange at this rate, add $7, it's going to cost me $257 to withdraw 150 pounds, plus that 5-pound fee. Now, what is the effective exchange rate? Well, effectively, I exchanged $257 for 150 pounds. Effectively, I paid $1.71 per pound. That is what you can compare to exchange rates that say $1.43 bid and $1.85 ask. So I would be charged $1.85 at the Travelex office. Effectively, I'm getting it at $1.71 at my ATM. So this is definitely better than the ATM. What is the effective rate if you're only withdrawing 25 pounds? Well, I'm withdrawing 25 pounds, but still paying a 5-pound ATM fee and still paying a $7 ATM fee. So I take my exchange rate, 157 times 103, put the 5-pound fee and the $7 fee, and it cost me $55. Effectively, that exchange rate was $55 over 25 pounds. That's the effective dollar per pound exchange rate. I'm paying $2.22. I would have done better at the Travelex office. And there's the basic answer when to use your debit versus exchanging currency directly at an office. If you're using a very small amount, say you just need enough to get a subway ride to your hotel or cab ride, say $25 or $50. In that case, I would probably use the Travelex office paying, say, the $1.83 from the prior slides. But the better solution is to estimate how many pounds you're going to need for your entire trip, the best you can guess. Maybe a little bit more, take a little bit more than the best you guess. So the worst case is you're a few pounds short and you have to go get a few more. So what you want to do is withdraw the money one time. So you pay that 5-pound, $7 fee once. And the reason why this effective exchange rate is going up as you withdraw less money is you have a fixed fee, 5 pounds and $7, no matter how much you withdraw, whether it's 1 pound or 1,000 pounds, you're still paying 5 pounds plus $7. So it's best to make one large withdrawal in the country, and then worst case, you could sell back the exchange at the end of your trip, or maybe buy something on the way out in the airport. Credit cards, it's very similar. For credit cards, one thing you have to make sure, you might want to Google your country, make sure that country does not require PINs. So some countries you travel to, especially Northern Europe, they don't like American credit cards. They call them swipe cards. They use PINs. So what they'll do is they'll come out with a little handheld device usually and stick your credit card, and they'll ask you for a PIN. If you don't know your PIN, you should probably do that right away. 2 weeks before you travel, you need to contact your credit card company and ask them, is there a PIN, and can you mail me my PIN? All right, and this is just higher security. The U.S. is actually farther behind in technology on credit cards than most of Europe, at least. Most of Europe requires PINs because they're safer. Now, like debit cards, credit cards also have a markup depending on your credit card. So I'd say 0 to 5% is the markup. Again, I have a Capital One Venture card which claims that has a 0 markup, and I've looked at it before, and the exchange rate does seem to be pretty close to the market rate when I use it. Now the trouble though is sometimes you go to a restaurant overseas, and if you want to use credit, they're going to tell you that they're going to use a 3% markup or a 3% credit card or Visa fee. So actually it might be best if you can ask to use a debit card at the restaurant, because again, Visa is going to charge the business a few percent at least to use the card. So they're going to try to recoup that, which they don't do in the States. All right, so you're best to use a PIN mode versus a swipe and sign. Now, the only difference between using credit and debit is just you have a different markup. All right, different markup. The foreign business may charge you a Visa fee, and if you don't pay it off at the end of the month, there might be a financing rate. So here's a simple example. use your credit card to charge a £150 item in London. The exchange rate markup from your bank is 2.5%. Say the fair exchange rate is 157 that your bank buys pounds for. Now the restaurant you're at is going to charge you a 3% credit card fee. All right, now this does not happen to every place, but it can. You just got to ask if there's a credit card fee. And let's say you don't pay off your credit card for 1 month. You get home a little bit after the payment date, and you're paying 24% APR, which means 2% per month. What's the total cost and effective exchange rate? Well, I'm going to use £150 exchanged at a rate of 157, increased by 3%. In this case, the foreign merchant charges me an extra 2.5% of the entire purchase. So I'll just increase the total value by 2.5%. And then I'm going to add, effectively, 1 month's interest. Take 24% over 12 months, 2% per month. I'll add 2% interest. So in this case, that £150 cost me $253, which is an effective exchange rate of 169, which in this example is actually a little bit cheaper than using your debit card. So I'd recommend is before you go, make sure you have PINs for your debit and credit cards. Make sure your debit and credit card companies know you're traveling abroad. And for your credit card company, request the PIN. And while you have them on the phone, explicitly ask them, what are your fees? What would it cost for me to use your debit card and an ATM card abroad, or an ATM machine abroad? And what is the markup on the exchange rate for both the debit and the credit card company? So here are some problems from practice of using bid and ask. So for example, if I give you a euro quote, bid and ask, dollar per euro, and a yen per dollar exchange rate, bid and ask, you should be able to answer problems like how many dollars would you receive if you sold 1,000 yen. And how to do these problems is, again, I'd set up yen times a dollar per yen exchange rate will give me dollars. Try to figure out if you're receiving or paying this amount, how many dollars would you receive? I'm going to receive less. Therefore, it's going to be the low dollar per yen exchange rate, which in this case is 1 over the high yen per dollar exchange rate. So these are good practice in bid-ask. Some more practice in bid-ask and cross rates. And some more practice in using credit cards and debit cards. So in this topic, we talked about how to use or how to obtain foreign exchange when traveling. Either use a currency office, paying a bid-ask spread, or using a debit or credit card.